Anyway, so we've been, yeah, as I said, with Awana about 15 years. I'm a missionary, a child discipleship missionary, serving parts of New York State as well as the other areas of the New England states. For the last 2 years, full time with the New England area. Kind of watched over that for 3 or 4 years, but now last couple of years it's been as full time as we have. We are a blended family. I'll talk about that in a moment. But we have two kids at home that we're raising. They're actually our grandkids. Trinity is 14, Zachary is 12, and they're both going to bump up a year in about 2 months. So they've been with us almost 12 years now. So one was a baby and one was almost three. And so we've been raising them. I call them terrorists, but as child discipleship, I guess I shouldn't do that. But they're just fun, teenage life.
There you
You
go.
got it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. I help churches. I help churches. How am I going to say that? Yeah. Sometimes they're inquiring about Awana. What is Awana? We're looking for a ministry, a program, either midweek or weekends. So I help them understand what Awana is as an organization. We're a discipleship ministry. We provide curriculum as well. I think anyone knows the name knows that. Been around 74th year now.
Okay.
And once they're up and help them get them up and running, and then once they're up and running, we just support them ongoing in a variety of ways: webinars, tools, visits,
Okay.
encouragement, counseling, kind of
Yeah,
like BCNE, right? You support the churches that
that's right.
you work with, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yep. And Awana is very, I know many of our churches here in New England use Awana in different, in different ways. So I think it's a really good active ministry. And they have good curriculum. You had left me some samples of materials and they're very well done. So that's great. So you're going to you're going to share your screen and you're going to launch in and talk a little bit about this whole idea of equipping our parents. So I'll let you
Yeah.
take it away. And I want to remind people that, again, the chat is open for you to throw some questions up there. And I'm going to be popping back on to keep the conversation going. So there
All
you go.
right.
Okay.
So I'm going to hold off on sharing my
Yep.
screen for
Mhm.
the first piece here. You're going to be stuck looking at me. Sorry for that.
That's all
But
right.
I just want to kind of lay a bit of foundation. So there's three segments to tonight. First part, I'm going to talk about laying the foundation, and then I'm going to talk about identifying what parents need, and then the third segment is how the church can help. So let's kind of lay the foundation of our point of our equipping parents for discipleship in the home. So I think that the first thing is important is the speaker in terms of, well, what do they know about that? Do they have experience, knowledge? And so to kind of get some understanding is to how I would qualify for speaking on this topic. I mean, beyond Awana, because this really isn't even Awana related specifically. It's more personal. So I'm going to share a little bit of our background. As I mentioned earlier, we're a blended family. My wife had three and I had three. And yes, six, and we joined together almost a quarter of a century ago, and have not have kids of our own. That's where the grandkids come in, right? But we've been a blended family, so we have been and continue to experience the dynamics of that. It is unfortunately not unique in our society, in our world today, but it is, unique to many. It is unique in and of itself, and the dynamics that go with that. As part of that, one of our sons, our oldest son, JJ, he passed away at the age of 26. So we've experienced that part of life, which, yeah, that's not the way life is intended to work, but that happens. And so we have worked through that. That's been several years now since he's been gone from us. We're also grandparents. We all seem to get there at some point in time. And with six kids, we're, of course, grandparents. We've got nine of them. Four of those kids have grown up in what I would call non-dual parent homes. So they've been in the middle of a divorce or separation. Uh, Different stories there, different life cycles are there. But so four of those kids have kind of gone through that, and a couple of them are still in that position. We have one great grandchild already, which is I'm still trying to get used to that concept. And then, as I mentioned, we have our two grandkids at home here that we're raising. So I'm kind of like dad, grandpa, and Cindy, my wife, is kind of like mom, grandma, So it's kind of balancing both sides of that. And and there's lots of life that's gone on, of course, since then. But truthfully, in all of that, we're still not experts. And I don't think that's an achievable role as a parent, to be an expert. And for those of you that are parents, I think you understand that fully. Each kid's unique, each kid has different experiences and needs, and society shifts and all of that. So we're just not experts. I want to make that clear. And we've learned what we've learned through God's grace and God's goodness in our life. And He's allowed us to have things that we would not wish to have, that we've walked through as well. So kind of the question here is then, why is equipping parents so important? And it's a typical statement we say, and we all understand, but the truth still remains that parents are the primary disciplers of their kids. And that's the way it was intended. And back in ancient Israel, the parents have been, and they were, the primary disciplers of the children. And other members of the community have worked alongside those disciplers in that process. I think there's an old saying, you don't hear too much anymore. It takes a tribe to raise a family, and there's a lot of truth in that. It's not a siloed experience. It does take the involvement of others, including the local church body and the community around that. So I just kind of want to say that to confirm something that you already understand, is that I presume in your churches you have children and youth ministries, but as you know, the church is not called to be the primary discipler, excuse me, of the kids today that attend your church. It's not your children's program as the primary discipler, not your youth group, not your Sunday school, or whatever other ministries that you have. Those are not intended to take the role of the parent. Though the truth, and we understand the reality of that, is that many parents, many Christian parents, are not even clear on how to disciple their kids and what that really means, and that it shifts with each kid. And many parents who don't even know the Lord would not even be interested in discipling the kids or even understand the concept of that. So the church, by all means, is not negated, and neither is it not needed. It is vital to a child's life in a lot of ways. We're just not the primary discipler of the children, not intended to be. Churches come alongside the parents and who have the kids and the families to help them, to equip the parents really to be the disciplers they need to be. So ideally and biblically, obviously biblically, the children in our church would have a home where they are being discipled by their parents. But even if it's not taking place at home, as I said, the church can still be a place of significant impact. And those are important words, significant impact, because you do have a uniqueness to you as a culture of the church body, as a culture of understanding discipleship and implementing it and providing it and equipping our parents to do that as well. So which then follows that if you do not have an effective ministry for the parents of your church, so let me rephrase that. So what follows then is that if you do not have an effective ministry for parents of the church, that you will not have an effective kids ministry or youth ministry. Not at the same level, because what will happen is if you're not equipping your parents to be the disciplers, and granted, we understand they need that you're going to have more of a bookend ministry in a sense. They're going to come in, you're going to disciple them, and they're going to go. And there's no continuation or carry on of that throughout the week. And obviously, that's not your goal. It's great to have a vibrant ministry, and we need to have those. They bring other pieces to a church body that are vital and important. But we really need to make sure the parents are engaged in the discipleship, in a ownership leadership role in the discipleship of the children. So I don't know if there's any questions, but let's take a moment and see if there are any questions that are popping in here.
So I want to give I like to give stuff away. So I do.
Not me.
Well, everybody gets a copy of a resource that Doug shared and or it had sent me, so you're all getting a copy of that. But I think I have another couple of discipleship resources I think that I can share with you. And so so I really appreciated, Doug, what you said, because I think a what do you call it, a poll had been done, and they had they had polled parents and asked them about this whole idea of being the discipler. And so so there was, what percentage, so that's my question, and you can put it in the chat, what percentage of parents in between 1% and 100% knew that they were to be the primary disciplers of their children? So put that, because I think that that's a good stat for people to know. So whoever gets closest without going over, I'm going to send you a resource. So what percentage of parents in that poll knew that they were the primary disciplers of kids?
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
I fear the answer. I fear the answer.
You fear the answer. Well, the answer, okay, anybody else want to put it in there? All right, well, the answer is 85% of parents knew that they were to be the primary discipler of their children. Now, that's the interesting that they knew that, but then they don't know what to do with it because they're not equipped. And that's why, that's why it needs to be a priority for the church, because parents know up here that they need to be the primary disciplers, but then they get home and they don't know what to do. So, so Kevin, it was very low, but you are the closest, Kevin. So think about that. He said 27%, but 85% of parents know that they're supposed to be the primary disciplers of their children. So that just, boggles my mind,
That's great. Yeah.
And don't you think, so don't you think the fact that where is the breakdown? So you're going to talk about where the breakdown is at church, do you think?
Me? Oh, that was for me.
I'm just,
Yes. I think that's what we're going to kind of identify in the next segment. Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right, good. All right. So Kevin, I'll send you a resource. Hopefully that'll help you more with discipling kids. So there you go. All right, I'll disappear.
All right. So I'm guessing that resource is not a Nintendo Switch. All right.
It's not. No, it will not be a Nintendo Switch.
Well, that's good. We don't need that distracting. All right.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. So great question. Yeah, that's a really good question. So as let me just bring up my screen here. Sorry about that. Got to hit the other button. All right. So as we step into this, what parents need, there's a tendency in maybe it's not in intended occurrence, but there's a tendency that you can fall into, or maybe a trap that a church can fall into, and say, okay, I know what they need. They need to have X, and they need to have these things. And what happens in that process of thinking that through, we need to have a program or a ministry, and we need to provide tools at home, and we need to blah, 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 right? All that stuff. But we forget, well, what do parents need? And parents are at all different stages, right? Economic stages, financial stages, spiritual levels, family structures, life experiences, growing up, now, whatever. There's all kinds of things. And the first thing we really need to identify or think about is understanding what our parents need, and that's what you're looking at here. I'm going to walk through some things here that we put together. I had some help with this tool or this information a while back, and it was very helpful. And actually, it was kind of developed with a young man, a pastor, who is a youth pastor at a church in the New England area, and he had a baby and, well, 2-year-old with one on the way. And so his perspective was different. So you take him at one end, who's just kind of starting out, so to speak, and then you got the old guy. I mean, then you got me at the other end, who's had kids grown up and we're still parenting. And so there's a variety or quite a range of thinking on that. So let's kind of dig into this in terms of what do parents need. And you probably have some thoughts of your own, which would be great to even, once we get, after this segment, I'll do another break and hear your thoughts and your input on this as well. So what do we need? So the first thing they need is rest. And, there's a lot of single parents, whether it's moms or dads or others that aren't the only ones, but they need time for a time of rest. They're exhausted. If you've got little ones, you understand that, depending on different stages. You've got teenagers, that's exhausting in a different way. Exhausting isn't always physical. Sometimes it's just straight emotional, mental, spiritual exhaustion. And that's what they need. One of the things that, and actually, let me bring up what they don't need is more work. So that which is an interesting comment too. Sometimes we think, okay, they need more rest, but what they don't need is more work. They don't need more things to do, more things to get involved in and do in their busy life, because most parents are quite busy already. They've got kids in school, they're running around and all of that. So a couple of years ago, a study was done by Ohio State University, and it found that 66% of all parents surveyed met the qualifications of what they call parental burnout. So parental burnout, interesting term, right? We think of job burnout, but there's a thing called parental burnout. And first of all, it means they were so exhausted by the pressure of caring for their children that they felt they had nothing left to give. So again, they're so exhausted by the pressure of caring for the children that they felt they had nothing left to give. All of their energy is put into the raising of their kids, in the running around, in their physical needs and their emotional needs. And then on top of that, 85% of them, as Sandy said, understand that there's a discipling aspect. That's probably the highest priority of anything they do, or at least it needs to be the most blended in of everything they do. Second, from that study is it also found that parents who were experiencing burnout were more likely to scream at their children, insult them, or hit them. It's that frustration level in just reaching out. Now, those are not things we want to know or hear, but the reality, and depending upon a parent's upbringing, some of those things just come to a natural head. And then the third thing they discovered was that dumping extra responsibilities on parents is usually instantly ignored. Interesting, right? 66% of them ignore added responsibility, things above and beyond them. And I think even in probably our own world, where we all exist and live in ministry, that there are things that come across our plate. We just can't do that right now, and it gets ignored. And some of those things are important, and some are not. But just working through those things is important. So our second point here is, what do they need? A partner in discipleship. Now, honestly, and I think I'm probably guilty of this myself to some extent, maybe when I was younger, but that sounds like somebody's got to commit to something. I need to own a family in a sense, and come alongside them is a full-time thing. It's going to take all of my empty hours, right? It's not that. But what they do need is a partner in discipleship. They do need someone, maybe someone with similar life experiences, maybe older, maybe not, maybe the same age, to come alongside of them. It's kind of like putting your arm around someone and saying, I'm with you. I don't understand everything about you. I don't need to, but I know you need help. And I'm here to help you do that. And that's a good thing. And we need to do that as a church body, but also individually. We need to really embrace and love our families, especially in today's culture when there's so much railing against them. What they don't need is an outside critic. Oh, I've seen how you talk to your child. How come you aren't doing Bible studies at home? You know, we do a Bible study every morning with our kids for 3 hours. I mean, I heard someone talking, they do a 2-hour Bible study every morning. It's like, wow, okay. I feel kind of inadequate, but what they don't need is what they don't need to hear that criticism or feel that criticism either. So that's something to think about as you engage with your parents. Oftentimes, parents feel alone in their fight. No one else understands. No one else has been in my shoes. Or the truth is, that's not the truth. The truth is that no one is coming alongside of me to show that they care, and they could be in my shoes, or they could understand where I'm at well enough that it matters, and they want to come alongside of me. And it does mean getting in the trenches a bit. And that's okay. I think if we step into discipleship, it's not a in and out like a boxing match. It's in it for a while. It's in it for a season, sometimes long term, sometimes a short term, sometimes just based on the immediate circumstances. And again, what they don't want you to do is tell them how they're getting it all wrong. People generally know when they're getting something wrong. They need the encouragement. All right. What do they need? They need answers to questions. What they don't need is unsolicited advice. Yeah, we can probably all think of that, right? Parents have questions from time to time, and we need to be listening in between the words for those. And this is where that in-person discipleship comes in more. It's more productive, is that you're getting to know someone, you're hearing them, you're maybe in a small group setting. A lot of churches have small group settings, community groups, whatever you call them. Great opportunity for people to come alongside of each other and kind of read in between the lines a little bit. Sometimes questions aren't asked because they're embarrassing or they're awkward or nobody else has that problem, or I don't want to talk about it in front of everybody or whatever. But they don't need the unsolicited outside critic advice. Now, what they do need is encouragement of their child's progress. And I know in our experience when we ran an Awana ministry at our local church, we did that a few years ago, that it was easy, and I hear it all the time. It's like, well, what do I do with this kid who doesn't have the best language or has no idea in church what to do? They're overactive and reactive to everything going on. Yeah, the parents know all that. If the kid's in school, they know all that, or they're going to learn that. And even if they're homeschooled, and that's no difference, public school, homeschool, private school, the kid's the kid, right? The children are the children. They are who they are. So the parents generally know well their kids and what the challenges are. And it's discouraging when we as a church body point those out as well. I always caution churches, people. So I spent a lot of time in Awana. As missionaries, we spend a lot of time equipping leaders to work with kids. So we don't work so much directly with kids. We work with those that work with kids. And it's one thing to say to a parent, "Hey, your kid was really out of control tonight," and they're like, you can kind of see they get they're a little downcast maybe, or discouraged, or here we are again, now it's the church, whatever the thinking is there, as opposed to saying, we love your son, daughter, when they're active, how can we help them engage in what's going on? You know, it's a little bit of wordsmithing, but it's really intention here is to come alongside and give no indication that, well, if they don't stop, we can't have them back next week. That's the wrong message, right? Parents don't need to hear that. They get that everywhere. They don't need an IEP for that, right? At church, we know our kids, right? We get to know the kids. So in your ministries, in your relationships, Sunday school, whatever your families are involved in, be a voice of encouragement and not talk about their kids' faults. All right, let's go on to the next one here. What else do they need? Well, a spiritual connection with their children. Spending time in prayer, you know, with their kids. It's, you know, and with God's word, you know, I find it, I think it's kind of, you know, from my own experience, it's a little more awkward. How do I want to say this? So it's a little more awkward if you're starting in like maybe they're older, they're either teens or just on the verge. If you're just starting, it's a little harder, I think, to kind of get used to that. Hey, we're going to pray together and we're gonna read God's word together, whatever that looks like, some kind of, you know, simplistic study or doing that kind of thing together. It's a little awkward versus if they've started when they're young. And the reality is of that, and I say that, the reality is that a lot of kids are a lot of families are not discipling. So we got to start them where they're at, whether the kids are teens or preteens, you know, or young, not even 5 yet, whatever the age range is. We just need to do it. And we need to encourage our parents to do that in a good way. We want them to actively, let me see here. So what do they not need? To be a distant observer of their child's spirituality. Wow, that's a word I can't almost say. Things, you know, life happens. And as a parent, you can just sit back and let it happen. And it's easy to do that. But we can't. We have to encourage our parents to be actively engaged in the discipleship of their kids. One of the, I got a funny story to share with you here. There's a friend of mine, he's a pastor of a church in Pennsylvania. This was a few years back. He was a youth pastor at the time, and he had spoken on a Sunday morning. The message wasn't important, but he had spoken on a Sunday morning, and he had spoken about the discipleship in the home and around that subject. So the topic was important. But anyway, after the service, he's, you know, down in front, and I don't know if, you know, for those of you that are pastors on the call here, if this has happened to you, but he saw the parent coming up the aisle, and she wasn't smiling and looked like she was going to praise the message. She was not happy. And she said to him, I send my child here every week, and she comes home and then nothing has changed. She's still difficult in every area. And she was frustrated and she was venting on him. And he calmly replied, though he did admit, I probably shouldn't have said this, but he did say this. He says, well, the problem is she goes home. And well, that's the reality of it in some cases, right? We only have them for such a little time, once a week maybe, to impact, but they do go home. So this is why it's so vital that we, as a church family, a church body, really need to equip our parents to support them in the discipling of their children, coming alongside of them and encouraging them in what's important, what needs to be done. And the last, of course, is they need prayer. And it's the last on the list. It's like the foundation, but we also understand it's the primary piece as well. It's the bookend, right? Prayer, you can't go wrong with prayer. What they need is prayer and not to be ignored. And I think that, you know, we understand the power of prayer, but it's way more powerful than we understand. And I'm sure we've all experienced it in different times in different places in our lives, but It's so amazingly fulfilling when we're praying on a family on a regular basis, a daily basis, whatever that is. And imagine in your church, if you had 50 families and you've got, and even within that 50 families, you've got 50 other people praying, one for each family, whatever that is. What a difference that could make. And why would that make a difference? Because God can make that happen. All right, we'll take a break on that one. Thoughts?
So if you want to throw in the chat, anything else you can think of that parents need, or ways we don't respond well in that? Yeah, these are very telling. These I thought were very, very telling. Because I know as a kids ministry leader, sometimes we do get frustrated with parents who just bring their kids to our program and then they don't want to help. And so you're telling us here that they need rest. And so there's that, the rub, and what do we need to do? And I think that as leaders, creativity when it comes to, helping parents. And I think the other thing too, Doug, might be the fact that we need to acknowledge to parents, we know you need rest.
Amen.
And maybe thinking about, what are some practical things that we can do as a church to provide that rest? And perhaps those of you that are watching, if you want to write something in the chat, what are some ways that practical, because I'm all into the practical,
Amen.
if you think that parents need rest, then, so as kids ministry leaders, how do we acknowledge that? And how do we, say to parents, and this is how we want to love you by giving you this type of rest? And how does that look? Do you know what I mean? Because I struggle with that in my kids ministry, but I've looked outside of parents. Yeah, Kevin says a parent night out. Yeah. Bring your parents, bring your kids so that, go on a date, and
Yep.
and I think and I could be wrong. I'm a grandparent myself, but I think that if the church calendars those, I think that's a big thing that we're saying to parents. We think that you're so important that we're calendaring these once a quarter. Do you know what I'm saying? And that it's not just going to be a once a year type of thing when, we think it's a good idea, but it's an ongoing type of thing. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, totally. You reminded me of one thing so one of the complaints, and it's not unique to Awana. We're just a midweek ministry, so it's kind of more unique to midweek, whatever ministries that is. But you hear that a lot is like, and I hear that from leaders, well, they just drop their kids off and leave. I'm like, so that's great. First of all, the kids are there. Secondly, you're giving the parents probably a break they don't get, whether it's a husband and wife or a single parent. They probably don't ever get a break, or it's rare. So take that as a positive, is what you're talking about, Sandy, and embrace that and provide other opportunities for them to come together and have fun.
Yeah. And I think the other piece might be, we need to share the vision with the rest of the church to say, this is what we know about parents. This is what we know about parents. Parents need rest. And so, there needs to be a way that the rest of us can, step up to the plate and help so that we can let them have the rest that they need. I mean, I only choose that one. I noticed somebody wrote here, go watch the kids while the parents go off for a weekend. I mean, maybe, and maybe again, start some type of a respite ministry. We do it for, special needs sometimes. but maybe just the run-of-the-mill parent needs a weekend away, and maybe we need to try to start some type of a respite ministry of some type. So that's a great idea. Somebody else says MOPS. Yeah, mothers of preschoolers, yeah, coming together to learn together. Yeah, that's a good one, because again, we need to empower them to disciple their children. This is a big need here. And if they're not being discipled, right? So, I mean, so I'm kind of reading between the lines of what you've said. The fact that, we're not discipling the parents, so how can they then disciple their children if we're not doing it on the front end?
Right.
So, but I think I like that, Kevin, and the fact that, we need to provide opportunities to help them learn, and I think we need to show it in our budgets. When our budget says, oh no, we can't afford to buy a discipleship piece for every family. Well, but can we afford not to? Might be something to think about. So good thoughts, everybody. I like that.
Yeah, good stuff.
Somebody else said, so the parents also need to figure out what is restful to them. So then when they take the time off, they need to return rested. Yeah, that's true. That's good. That's a very good follow-up point. Yeah, I like that. Okay. All right. Those are good points there, Doug. Carry on.
Good feedback. Yeah, I love that. I always love learning new things.
Yeah.
Good ideas. So let's move on. Our last segment here is how can the church help? And this is a little bit more practical in a sense. Kind of still is that foundational understanding, but so on the left-hand side here, those are the needs we just talked about. And we're going to define this now into the institution, which is the church. Sounds like an institution, sounds like a bad thing, but it's the institution, the church we're talking about. And then the community overall, the church community. So we talked about rest, right? They need rest. What can oops, sorry. There we go. I'll get the hang of this job yet. There we are. All right. So institution, the church, all right. We just talked about that, providing a break once a week. Sometimes it's just on a Sunday morning with your Sunday school. Could be a midweek program, could be an after-school program. There's lots of different organizations that do all mix of those things. But something that provides a break once a week. Now, I typically, and I'm probably Sandy as well, I don't like to use the word program. I prefer to use the word ministry, because a program really should be a ministry, not just something we put on or produce, but it's an actual ministry. But those events or ministries, they do provide and can provide a break once a week. And just in the routine. And there's so many benefits to that. There's so many legs that go off of that, that build trust, build respect, build support, in both a family structure and in the kids coming in and biblical understanding and all of that. But you give that space for them to breathe in. And whether that's an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever that is, or as Sandy mentioned, a respite style, whatever that is, a program or a ministry that builds in that opportunity to give them a break. And it's not like, okay, in order for you to participate, you have to check these 4 boxes each week. No, we're talking about just them coming, their kids coming and having that break, or they come as a family and have a family game night. Nothing they have to prepare for or being wise about, right? They just come and enjoy the time. So again, whatever those things are. Daily life, it just requires many breaks. I think we understand that. As an institution, we can provide that to some extent, but within community, there's others in your church that could reach out and take them to coffee, or they got little ones that can't leave the house to go to their house and have a cup of coffee or Coke or Pepsi or whatever works, right? So needing a partner in discipleship. So programs, they do provide a discipleship structure. I think we understand that. And, and that's important. You know, discipleship does take organization. It does take intentionality. It happens in life as we learn and grow and fail and succeed. There's lots of opportunities to disciple and teach in those moments and outside of those moments. But a program or a ministry does provide some guided structure, and oftentimes that tool that is used midweek or Sundays or whenever can also be applied and helped and used in the home environment with some tweaking or some coming alongside. So think about, oh, well, you've got to disciple your kids, and oh, your kids, and oh, I don't have anything to give you to help you with that. That's not productive, right? So think about tools that are out there that would help you in providing that for the family structure. The community, as I said, true discipleship really happens daily in daily life. You know, those of us that I'm sure probably everyone here, unless several I know, have raised kids, and you know, week to week or even day to day, sometimes it's different. If you've raised a teenage girl, as we're doing, you know, we're here one moment and we're out of the roof the next moment, and you know, it's just part of life. But trying to navigate through that, that's kind of discipleship, right? Bringing them back down to home base, into a place of calmness, I guess I could say. Answers to questions. Well, so this is an interesting one. It kind of depends upon the questions that are being asked. Obviously, pastors know everything, and they have the answer to absolutely everything. I'm hearing crickets. All right, or laughter. Not hearing anything. Correct. We understand that. We're called of God to do what we're called to do, and as pastors are, and it doesn't mean they have all the answers. And as we understand, all of us, that, you know, we're all learning stuff as we go. But maybe you as a pastor or as a leader in your church or a volunteer or whatever your role is just an attendee, you don't have all the answers. But what you can do is you can hear the questions and you can get the answers for them, and you can become knowledgeable on your own. And that's very true. Questions are not asked without trust. Depending upon the question, there's generally a level of trust that the answer you're going to give them, they're going to trust to be accurate and to be based on some knowledge and understanding, whatever those questions are. So it's important to field the questions, answer what you can knowledgeably, without making it up, and not be afraid to say, you know, don't know. I'll find out. I'll look into this, and we'll learn this together. In terms of encouragement of their child's progress, observation of a classroom setting. Great opportunity to, in your ministry, if you've got a children and youth ministry, invite the parent in for a night and say, hey, why don't you just come, and you don't have to do anything, just come and sit and watch your kid, what we do, or come and jump in this group and just see what we're doing, so that you're kind of basically modeling one style of ministry. And you know, they need to understand they're not gonna do that at home, right? Because that's not the same environment, same structure, but it models for them what a structured discipleship ministry would look like in a church, and what parts of that could look like in a home environment. And of course, in community, we learn that in observation of everyday life, the experiences that are gained through that. For a spiritual connection with their children, so programs can provide talking points or structure for home study. And people can lead by example in fostering spiritual connections. So programs, you know, one of the things that we did is in our scenario here for us is my wife created a parenting with a pause. Excuse me. No, that's not a parenting with a purpose. Wrong one. A parenting with a purpose. And those are a take-home sheet. So it's based on the Awana curriculum for the kids, obviously. But it's something that she pulled together, and it's a simple sheet that goes home with the kid. where you give it to the parent to make sure it gets home, if you know what I mean. And it's just some talking points. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist. We always go to rocket scientist, right? But you don't have to be a theologian or educated in some crazy degree. Just give them some talking points. This is what we learned this week, and these are some things you can carry on at home. Our youth pastor at our church, every week we get a email that says this is what we're going to talk about in this coming Sunday night in the series we're in, and he gives detail. And then after that, the next day, we usually have what we talked about as well. So kind of a confirmation and some talking points. And it's great. Our children's ministry, which is not Awana, our children's ministry, nothing, no communications. So it's easy enough to pull together some talking points and to help come alongside the parents and kind of transition or bridge that discipleship in the home. That's another way to do it. You are working with our kids, so share what you're teaching. And obviously in prayer, it's an interesting statement. An institution, in this case, a building, cannot pray, right? But a community can pray. A community of believers in the local church can be praying and should be praying. So I guess that's a shorter bit of thoughts, but would appreciate and be interested in your thoughts, anything along that as well.
Yeah, those are great. Those are good. Those are very good. A good reminder for us. So in the chat, maybe you've heard Doug talk about some things that the church could potentially do. So what's maybe one or two things out of some of the things that he's mentioned tonight that your church could, get around and maybe think about? It's like steering the ship. You know what I mean? You get this tugboat going in the one direction, and you got to steer it, you got to move it. And, what's that one thing or two things that we can start doing, to turn that ship around? Because we're heading in not so good places, right?
Very true.
And so, I think they're, again, practical things. I love the idea of inviting parents to come to the classroom and, you don't tell them that you're modeling it, but you are modeling for them, One of the things, of course, Easter's coming. In a lot of Baptist churches, our church is one that does Lent. And so, we're going to provide kids with a Lenten calendar, families with a calendar of 40 things that they can do during Lent that can help them, disciple their children, very practical, short, one a day. And I found them online, and they're about poster size, and, again, a small thing that parents could do every single day, which I think is a great idea.
Yep.
And then for my class, so, we're going to do that for the church. And then my class I found online, they're a little bit more expensive, but they're scratch offs. And every day the kid, it's almost like it's like an advent calendar. You every day you discover something new as you're going along. And again, I only have 3 or 4 kids in my class. So, I'm going to provide that for families, because I think that's the other piece of what we need to do is, what can we provide for families? What could we give them? So I like that. All right, so somebody has having people adopt a family to pray for. That's an awesome idea. Yeah.
We did that once in our church. We put like index size cards out there with the kid's first and last name and a picture of them, what grade they were in, and people just picked them up and and adopted a family, you know, as Kevin said. It's just a great, I mean, boy, that's personal
Right.
ministry.
Yeah. 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 I think I got it from Bayard. I think there's a company out there called Bayard, and yeah, they provide, you know, different, you know, they provide them for all different denominations. It's not just, it wasn't a Baptist denominational group that I found it. I think it was Bayard or something like that. But anyway, I looked at the calendar. It looked like something we could use. So I'll send you the link, Jan. But yes, so I mean, I love the idea of the whole adoption thing, and maybe the adoption thing for prayer would even work into, you know, calling them up and say, hey, I'm praying for you. What can I specifically pray for? You know, because again, I think that's the other thing is people need, you know, people need that interaction. You know, somebody outside of church, you know, is thinking about me this week. So I think things like that is a really practical things that you can do. Yeah, yeah, love that idea. Love that idea.
And I think this is should be obvious, and I'm sure it is obvious, but this is not what we're talking about tonight is not a pastor only thing.
Correct. Yes.
This is a community, church community ownership.
Yeah.
And it may take some one-on-one conversations to get a few people started and moving in that direction, but man, you can't go wrong.
Right, right. It's so important. It really is so very important that we, you know, start turning that ship, because it's, you know, it's not getting any better. And I, you know, I always say the other thing is, if you have people that are doing kids ministry, whether it's Sunday school, or if you have a weekday kids ministry, the other thing is to try to encourage them to do something in the area of taking home something. If you use curriculum, there are some curriculums that already have that attached. So take advantage of that. You know, so you might have to print it out, but you know, it might be worthwhile, you know, to do. So, you know, providing something small to parents, again, is helpful. And I think that we have these, you know, I think we have these awesome opportunities, especially during, you know, Holy Weeks. You know, we've got Easter coming up. You know, why not take advantage of that, you know, time of year to do a little something special. You know, summertime is another time where sometimes it goes dead. Find something this summer where you could do a little discipling. You know, maybe those, you know, maybe those night out for parents during the summertime, maybe that's a good time to do it. You know, then you're getting into the fall, and, you know, you can have harvest parties or trunk or treats, or, you know, something where you can, you know, back to school, you know, utilize some of those things. Then of course you get into, you know, our Advent season and the holiday and all that. Well, let's take advantage of some of those things and teach our parents, you know, because it does go back, I believe, to the fact that we're not discipling parents well. And I know there were a couple of people on tonight who have done the D life, which is discipleship on an ongoing basis. And I think that really, if you do discipleship in your church, I think you'll see that extended into your children's ministry. So what parting words do you have for us, Doug? I'm going to put my screen up and I'm going to show a couple of things that are coming up, but what parting words do you have for us?
Sure. You know, it's easy to get bogged down into trying to pull together a whole plan. Like you know, we're a Western civilization. We got to have all our ducks in a row and all that. Just forget all that. Just do something. Get moving. Get started. Time is slipping. Opportunities are slipping, and we understand that. So I think my advice is just get started. Don't have to have a perfect program in place, but get others involved. Think it through, get a group together, get a group of parents together, talk about what do you need? How can we help? How can we help others? whatever that looks like. You've got, every church has a wide range of ages and experience. Tap into those.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, that's what I challenge people. Don't leave this webinar till you have one thing nailed down, one thing different. You know, before you got on here tonight, you had some ideas or whatever, but you know, nail it down right now. And if you want, write it in the chat just so you have it nailed down. At least you've written it down somewhere.